What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Hockey Time here, back again for another video. Wanted to do a rather informal video with you guys today and run you through what NHL teams I cheer for. So I know a lot of hockey YouTubers kind of go through this exercise, explaining why they do and don't like certain teams. So just going to go through here on good old Tier Maker and go through the teams I like, the teams I dislike, and some of the reasons why. So just to run you guys through the tiers, obviously my teams are my teams. I have three teams that are going to go in that tier. And then teams I'm a big fan of, teams that I like, teams I will watch willingly. I didn't really know what to title that tier. Not necessarily teams that I'm a fan of that I hope do well. Excuse me, but more so teams that I just enjoy watching regardless of kind of whether I like or dislike them. Indifferent is obviously teams I'm indifferent towards, and then teams I dislike and teams I very much dislike. So right off the jump here, I think I'm actually just going to do the top tier and bottom tier first, and the rest will kind of fill in, but the top and bottom tiers kind of explain one another. So my favorite team is the Washington Capitals. And just as a clarification as well before we get too far into this, these tiers will each be in order. So from left to right, if you want to think of it as like rank 1 to rank 32, we'll go left to right. So the Caps are my favorite team. Second is the Canucks, and third is the Colorado Avalanche. I could kind of, give the full story of why I'm a fan of each of these three teams, but basically, ever since I was a kid growing up, these were the teams I was drawn towards, mostly because of their goalies at the time. The team I played for when I was a kid was the Avalanche, so hence the Avalanche being on that list, and I'm childish, so they're still on that list. As far as the teams on the bottom of this list, obviously, being a Caps fan, the Pittsburgh Penguins are going to be at the very bottom. I would have 17 piles of garbage ahead of the Pittsburgh Penguins, so they can stay there forever. And then 31st would be the Chicago Blackhawks, and 30th, the Tampa Bay Lightning. So the Blackhawks have a little bit of a rivalry with Vancouver and Colorado, although nothing crazy. Obviously, there's been some playoff history for each of those two teams. But more so than anything for Tampa and for Chicago, just how damn good they've been over the last, decade and a half. You could kind of throw Pittsburgh into that mix too, but Pittsburgh has reasons aside from just their success for me to hate them. But for the most part, kind of like anti-bandwagoner system here. Obviously, Chicago has some internal stuff going on that I don't think anyone's really a fan of. So fine with keeping them at the bottom. And then Tampa is just one of those teams that's been too good for too long. Once they're, a little bit worse, they'll probably slide up this list a bit. But yeah, so that's the top and bottom tier. I think I'm just going to go through the rest of these alphabetically for you guys, and I'll give a little bit of, an explanation of why I'm placing them where I'm placing them. So starting off with the Ducks, I am a pretty big fan of the Anaheim Ducks. I believe it was back when I was, at the end of beginning of high school, end of maybe middle school. I don't remember exactly, but John Gibson was coming out of Kitchener. And was just kind of a superstar there. His numbers were really good. I remember like watching some of his highlight packs or whatever as a kid and just like instantly being drawn to him. So that's the main reason that the Ducks are there. But obviously they have some really fun players now, the likes of Trevor Zegras, Mason McTavish, Jamie Drysdale. Those guys all make being a fan of the Ducks pretty easy regardless of how bad they are. So it is kind of tough watching them struggle to start the year and, the way they ended the year last year. But nonetheless, Ducks are definitely up there for me. The Arizona Coyotes, pretty much indifferent. Not all that fun to watch, so they don't really make it into this tier, but not really any players on that team that I'm a huge fan of. I'm happy to cheer for guys like Karel Vejmelka, who are just going to get 40 to 50 shots thrown at him every night this season, but yeah, I don't really have much to say for the Coyotes. No players there that I'm really chasing, so that's all good. The Boston Bruins, I'm not really a fan of the Bruins. Ironically, I did grow up closest to the Boston Bruins. I'm originally from New Hampshire. But growing up, I just never really found myself cheering for them. I think, when I first started playing and watching hockey, I was probably cheering for them for a handful of years. But as I, developed my own opinions, kind of stopped cheering for the Bruins. So they have just kind of stayed in that echelon of teams down at the bottom. The Buffalo Sabres, this is one of those teams that kind of like the Ducks will fluctuate based on the players they have on their team. One of those teams that I think it's better for hockey when they're good, but right now they just have a lot of young, exciting players. I've especially over the last, 60 or so games that they've played, really enjoyed watching Dylan Cousins and Rasmus Dahlin get a little bit more like grit and sandpaper to their game. I was watching them play the Panthers the other day. And just watching those two guys go up against Matt Tkachuk like all game long and just showed no fear at all was really fun to watch. So exciting future for Buffalo. Exciting to see what they can become. And yeah, all in all, just a pretty enjoyable team there. Calgary is also going to go in the indifferent tier. I don't really have strong feelings towards the Flames. You'll see where I put the Oilers in this tier list as well, but I'm one of those people that's lucky enough to not really have a dog in the fight when it comes to the Battle of Alberta, so I can just kind of sit back and enjoy it. The Flames can be fun to watch, but I don't really enjoy their style of play. I do like Jacob Markstrom from his time in Vancouver, but not a ton of players there I'm really drawn towards. Their play style isn't really all that exciting. I'm, nowhere close to them geographically, so they just end up slotted in this indifferent tier. Carolina, they end up in the third tier here. Back in my, childhood bedroom, I have a poster of Cam Ward sitting somewhere, of him hoisting the cup back in, '06? So, Cam Ward fan, kind of from his days as a rookie on the Hurricanes. I honestly couldn't tell you how I ended up with that poster in my room, but watched Cam Ward as a result, watched the Hurricanes as a result. That's really all I have there. They're kind of similar to the Sabres, some fun players to watch, a pretty good team. The dump and chase gets a little boring after a while, but, it's easy to watch good teams because you can appreciate just good hockey, and obviously the Canes play some pretty good hockey, so that's that. Columbus, kind of similar to Calgary in a sense. Not a ton of players I really cheer for. I'm excited to watch Kent Johnson in the future. Excited to watch what Line A can do aside Johnny Gaudreau. It's hard not to cheer for Elvis Merzlikins, but just all in all, no one on that team really excites me. I think the Cannon's kind of annoying. So yeah, pretty indifferent toward the Blue Jackets. Don't like them. Handful of players I like, but yeah, pretty much indifferent. First team in this middle tier here is the Dallas Stars. I just avoided putting them in this third tier. Really like Jake Ottinger. Really fun to watch. Jason Robertson, Miro Heiskanen, Rope Hintz is just a dog on the ice. That guy works so damn hard. It's crazy. But yeah, just a lot of younger guys that really have put their time in to become what they are. And I think they have a pretty bright future ahead of them. But the biggest reason that they're as high on this list as they are is obviously Jake Ottinger. Being a goalie myself, seeing what he did in the playoffs last year, it was hard for me not to root for that kid. And through the first couple of games he's played this year, I've found myself in pretty much every game wanting the Stars to win just because he was in it. That being said, there are a couple teams whose goalies do the same thing for them that you'll see higher on this list. Hint, hint, wink, wink, Nashville Predators. But yeah, so Dallas is in that middle tier. Another team in that middle tier is the Detroit Red Wings. Obviously, as an Avs fan, I can't really afford to put them too high on this list. But very similarly, a lot of young players that are exciting to watch. A lot of guys that are easy to cheer for. Obviously, Dylan Larkin is a beast. He's fast as hell. Mo Seider is just so incredibly strong for such a young guy. Lucas Raymond, I think, has got a really bright future ahead of him. So a lot of just, again, young pieces that should bring Detroit a lot of success moving forward, and they're all pretty fun to watch. So yeah, we'll never be cheering for Detroit, but we'll definitely be happy to watch them, especially in the coming years while those guys are all still in their prime and growing as a unit. The Edmonton Oilers also go into this tier, 3 in a row here. As I said, if I'm watching the Battle of Alberta and I am cheering for a team, right now it is the Edmonton Oilers just because I want to see Connor McDavid have success, and one of those teams that think it's good for the league if the Oilers are good. Not that Calgary is not an example of one of those teams, but yeah, I think because I don't really have a team in the Battle of Alberta, I would just prefer to see McDavid excel in those games because those are the high pressure games that, kind of prove what kind of player he can be. Obviously, I don't think anyone questions what Connor McDavid is at this point in his career. But nonetheless, I would, I guess, prefer to see Connor McDavid have success than I would the likes of, I guess, Elias Lindholm, Jonathan Huberdeau, etc. Um, and it's hard to, not enjoy watching Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl do what they do on the ice. I mean, McDavid's just so fast. Draisaitl, his hockey sense, his ability to read plays before they happen, his shot, it's hard not to enjoy watching those guys play. The Florida Panthers are another team in this third tier, pretty much solely because of Spencer Knight. I was a Boston College hockey fan growing up, hoping that sooner rather than later he becomes a starting goalie there so that I can enjoy watching them even more. But yeah, I mean, they're still a fun team to watch too. Barkov's one of the more likable guys in the league. I think he's just a very good all-around player. Matt Tkachuk, another player I really like watching, obviously in Florida now. So some good pieces in Florida that I enjoy watching, and that's why they are as high on this list as they are. LA Kings, another team sliding into this third tier. Where I grew up in New Hampshire is about 10-15 minutes outside of where the Manchester Monarchs used to play. Manchester was the AHL affiliate of the Los Angeles Kings. They won the Calder Cup, I believe, back in 2015 and then relocated the next year. I think more for geographic reasons than anything else. Obviously, it's kind of tough having your AHL affiliate to be all the way across the country when you need to call up players, especially on emergency basis. So was definitely a bummer to see the Monarchs leave, especially given the timing. But, obviously their NHL team being the Kings meant I was cheering for the Kings growing up quite a bit. Right now, they don't have a ton of players on their roster that I really enjoy watching. Obviously, being a goalie, I'm a pretty big Jonathan Quick fan. Just a stupidly athletic guy for how, old he is. But yeah, as far as the other pieces, I mean, Sean Durzee's fun to watch. Drew Doughty, when he's not being a crybaby, is fun to watch. But yeah, Kings are still kind of working their way up this list for me, but they're always going to be kind of in these top two tiers just because of, my childhood. The Minnesota Wild are kind of a tough team for me. I think they probably go in the indifferent tier ahead of both of these guys, if I can squeeze them in there. There we go. Kind of fun to watch. It's exciting when Minnesota's good just because of how big of a hockey state Minnesota is. Kirill Kaprizov, obviously extremely fun to watch. Such an electric player. But aside from that, there's really not a ton of pieces there that I care for. Fleury, obviously another guy that it's easy to cheer for him, what he's been through kind of being thrown to the wind from Pittsburgh and then similarly from Vegas. So always kind of silently cheering for Fleury, and I hope Kaprizov continues to just be the player he was last year. So we'll see what he can do there. But yeah, I don't like or dislike the Wild. They're fun to watch. They're probably just like Calgary, just outside this tier. But yeah, the Montreal Canadiens. This is a team that changes quite a bit. So, despite the fact that I don't cheer for the Bruins anymore, like I did when I was a very young kid, I've also never really liked the Canadiens. However, a lot of the young players that they have on their team now are really fun to watch. I don't know what exactly it is, but I really enjoy players that have just like that extra bit of swagger to them. The, Matthews, the Eichels, and here the Cole Caulfields. So really more for Cole Caulfield than anything else, but again, another team that has a lot of young pieces that I'm excited to see. I hope Caden Primo develops into something more than what it looks like he might develop into now. I know his development hasn't been nearly as quick as a lot of people hoped. But one of those younger goalies that I just really hope he can find success. I wouldn't mind at all seeing him become the starter of the Canadiens, maybe a couple of years down the road, but obviously he's got a long road ahead of him if that's going to happen. So we'll see what happens there. But yeah, some fun young pieces to watch on the Canadiens. That's why they're so far up this list. This is probably the highest they'll ever be, and when those players leave, they'll probably drop all the way back down to this second to last tier here. The Nashville Predators. Sorry, my voice is starting to go out on me here. Nashville probably goes into this third tier too. Similarly to Florida, pretty much just because of UC Saros. Do like Matt Duchene as well, despite the way his time in Colorado ended. But mainly just UC Saros. I mean, he has to fight against his body, pretty much every time he plays just because of his size. And he's one of those guys that I can't help but cheer for every time he steps on the ice because I forget who referred to it this way, but he doesn't get the luxury of making any saves on accident. A lot of bigger goalies, the Darcy Kempers, the Ben Bishop back when he was in his peak, because of how big they are, they can make a lot of saves on accident. Shots that, whether it be through a screen or, they're just sprawling out and hoping it hits them. Because of how big they are, sometimes the pucks do exactly that. They hit them. Saros doesn't have that luxury because of his size. Every save he makes is, very intentional. Not obviously that, bigger goalies like Ben Bishop would have been not trying to make saves, but I think you guys get the point I'm trying to make there. On to New Jersey. New Jersey's another team, a lot of fun young pieces in place. Kind of struggling right now. I hope Mackenzie Blackwood can bounce back, but just because of the players on their roster that kind of make it up here, I've never, liked or disliked the Devils. Obviously, Marty having been there, and me being a goalie, you would think they might be a little bit higher up this list, but yeah, Jack Hughes is a fun player to watch. Jesper Bratt brings a lot of speed and intensity and pace to the game. But I don't know, New Jersey's one of those teams that, despite kind of the pieces they have on their rosters, never really stuck with me. So they make it into this tier, just edging out being on this indifferent tier, but fun to watch for sure. The New York Islanders are also in this second to last tier here. We can throw the Rangers in here as well. Just, they're in the Metro Division. They're rivals with the Caps. Not really much else to say there. They've both had playoff experiences against the Capitals in the time that I've been a fan, so don't really care for either of those two teams. Both obviously have some players that are really exciting to watch on a player level, but pretty much hoping that they lose every game they play, unless, they're against Pittsburgh. So that's the two New York teams for me. The Ottawa Senators. Ottawa, I think, is going to go in this tier of teams that I like. Previously, they probably would have been in the will watch willingly tier, but the ads they made this offseason, I think, just kind of pushed them over the edge. I don't know. I made the prediction that they're going to make the playoffs. I don't know whether or not they will. I really hope they do, just because I want to see what they can bring once they get into the playoffs. But I hope Giroux can get a cup. He's one of those guys that's been around forever. Just like one of the hardest workers on any team he plays on. DeBrincat's a guy that I've cheered for since he was, a rookie in Chicago. So two guys there that I would really like to see have success. So hoping Ottawa can do well. Additionally, my fiance is a huge fan of the Kachuk family, and obviously Brady being in Ottawa and Matt being in Florida helps out both of their cases as well. Philly, I am a bigger fan of Philly. I went to school in Philadelphia and now live in South Jersey, so, Philadelphia is right next door to me. They obviously kind of suck right now, but nonetheless, always hoping that Philly wins, unless it's, against one of these three teams. Let's see. San Jose. I'm pretty indifferent about San Jose. I don't really dislike San Jose at all. It's hard to actively root against them right now just because of how bad they are. But I do really like Timo Meier. I kind of hope he gets traded just so that he can, have a shot at success, because it looks like it might be a relatively long, painful rebuild for the San Jose Sharks, but we'll see. But for now, they're in this indifferent tier. Seattle, despite their kind of irrelevance, I'm going to move Jersey over because I think I probably prefer them over Edmonton. Despite Seattle's kind of irrelevance, I do think they're fun to watch, mostly just because of their jerseys. But adding Matty Beniers helps a lot. He was one of the guys on the U.S. junior team that won back in 2020 that I was just rooting for the whole tournament. He's obviously gotten a lot bigger since then, but he was the youngest, one of the smaller players on the team, and every single game that kid went into, he was just busting his butt to be where he needed to be in the right place to help his team. So Definitely a fan of Matty Beniers. I wouldn't be surprised to see Seattle move up this list over the coming years. But yeah, hoping this team gets better because right now they're, last year I would say they were irrelevant. Now they're kind of trying to crawl their way out of being irrelevant. But yeah, so Seattle kind of smack in the middle right there. Just looking at these teams, I want to do some quick reshuffling before I keep going here. LA is up here. Florida above Carolina. Actually, I think Carolina might be at the end of this tier for now. I think that looks right. I think that's all okay. This is all okay. Yeah, okay. St. Louis. St. Louis is in the dislike tier, and I honestly can't tell you why. I've just never, enjoyed the players on their team, their play style. Kind of unlike every other team in these bottom two rows, I don't really have a reason for disliking St. Louis. I just don't really like St. Louis. But I'm not indifferent to them. I definitely hope they lose. So St. Louis can stay in the bottom two tiers for now. Toronto is going to go in the indifferent tier. Obviously, one of the teams that when they're doing well is better for hockey. But it is hilarious to watch their fans squirm when it comes to playoff time. And just recently, last night, their loss to Arizona. Hilarious to go on Twitter and see the reactions of Leafs fans just, ready to blow up the entire organization because they've lost one game to the Arizona Coyotes. So, as a hockey fan, I hope the Leafs do well because I think it's good for the sport. Obviously, like I mentioned, I like Austin Matthews. I, despite the fact that he left, hope Samsonov does well there. Hard not to cheer for Matt Murray to come back from injury, even though he just got hurt again. Yeah, I can't cheer for the Leafs, but I'm not really cheering against them either. So, indifferent, but would be hilarious if they once again managed to lose in the first round of the playoffs this year. We'll see what happens there. The Vegas Golden Knights. So this is kind of a funny one. When they first came into the league as an expansion team, I thought, all right, cool. This is a great opportunity for me to add a fourth team to my pile of favorite teams. And they should be bad, so there's nobody that's going to argue that I'm bandwagoning, right? And then they go on a run and make it to the Stanley Cup final and play against my Washington Capitals. So that, that plan backfired on me pretty badly. And then, of course, they have this drama with their GM kind of getting rid of players in pretty distasteful ways. They're constantly fighting up against the cap. It seems like they're always going for the biggest, free agent, deadline acquisition, whatever it may be. So that part of being a fan of Vegas has been kind of frustrating, but despite all of that, didn't really waver in loyalty to them. Again, the way that the team's managed kind of drives me nuts, but I was very excited when Eichel got traded there. I don't know how much faith I have in Logan Thompson, but as far as a storyline goes, I hope beyond a lot of other players this year that Logan Thompson does really well just because he's fought his way to make it to where he is, played in the East Coast League, played in the AHL, so would be very happy to see him find some success. And then the last team here, the Winnipeg Jets, they're also a team going in this second tier, pretty much solely because of Connor Hellebuck. Again, grew up in New Hampshire, went to a ton of UMass Lowell games, and Connor Hellebuck was the goalie for UMass Lowell for, I believe, 2 or 3 years. I can't remember exactly, but I wore 37 in college because of Connor Hellebuck. I wear 37 on my men's league team because of Connor Hellebuck. The Jets will almost certainly nosedive, no pun intended, out of this tier once Connor Hellebuck leaves, whenever that may be. And quite frankly, not a huge fan of Blake Wheeler, Mark Scheifele. I like Kyle Connor, Nate Schmidt, all those guys, but yeah, once Hellebuck leaves, the Jets will probably not be in that second tier anymore. But for now, they are. And that's the list for me. So let me know your thoughts. I would love to hear you guys' stories on, who you cheer for and why you cheer for them. I'm sure there's some pretty interesting ones out there. Mine are relatively bland. Most of them are just because of, who I cheered for as a kid, where I grew up, where I live now, whatever. But yeah, so this is kind of my NHL fandom in a picture. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Leave a like if you enjoyed the content. Not sure how much more content like this I can really do, but if you have any ideas for me, definitely drop those down below as well. Subscribe if you like. It is free, and I will see you guys in the next one. See ya.